Hey everyone, and welcome to Cyber 2023. If you just tuned in for the stream, thank you so much for being here. I am Dark. I am part of the just amazing community team here at Hack the Box, and I'm so excited to show you my presentation for this year's Cyber Apocalypse. That being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. My presentation is Get Involved, Hacking Your Local Community. We're going to talk about the various ways that you can get involved, find different people, and actually get your foot in the door in your local community. That being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. The problem, how do we actually get involved? Getting involved and finding actual people in your local area is one of the biggest problems that a lot of newer members of the community come to me with. It's a very common question, and for a lot of people, it can be very difficult to know how to actually break in. Even looking at the first point, who the heck hacks here? When we are looking at our local communities, it can often be very difficult to find other cybersecurity professionals because a lot of us are antisocial. A lot of us don't necessarily go out and advertise, hey, we're hackers. Oh, this is where I live. Oh, you should come and get involved with me. It's not very common, and a lot of times it can be daunting to actually see other professionals in the area. You get to the point where you have a lack of a local hacking community, or maybe it's a non-obvious one. Maybe it's hard to find those meetups. Having that visibility into the job pool too, this makes a huge impact here. If you don't know what your job pool looks like, if you don't know what your employers look like around the area, you don't necessarily know what cybersecurity positions are at those employers. You don't necessarily know that, oh, maybe this big business downtown has a bunch of cybersecurity positions and they all go through this meetup. You can see how that lack of visibility really compounds and can create a really big barrier to entry. And that's something we'll talk about in just a moment. You must construct additional pylons. It can be hard to know what resources you have access to right away. And finding these meetups, finding people in your area without knowing where you can actually look, it can be very difficult to actually get started. Again, that situational awareness of resources, if you don't know what's out there, especially if you are a newer person, and I have this echoed in a layer, the last point there rather, InfoSec with and without mentorship, it makes a big difference. Those of you that have been in InfoSec for a little while that might be watching this presentation are probably thinking, yeah, there's a huge difference here. And those that, maybe you're a little bit newer to InfoSec, if you don't have a mentor or don't have folks you can talk to, like a hacking clan or people that you can go and study with, or just a Discord in general where you can hang out with, it can be very hard to get started just because you don't have that community around you. Beyond that, knowing where Square One actually is, how you can get started, and what getting started even looks like can be really difficult in the first place. Everything's easy once you've done it. It's one of those things where it can be a fear factor. It can be these intimidation factors that it's am I qualified to go and hang out with these other hackers? I remember the first time that I was considering going to a local CitySec meetup, I genuinely was thinking, okay, am I going to understand anything that's going on? And I ended up going anyways, just to really give it a try. And it was a ton of fun. But it's definitely a barrier to entry, especially for newer folks. So how can I actually find these other cybersecurity professionals in my area? And I have a bunch of options listed here. Some of them are less obvious than others. And I'll go through these one by one real quick. The biggest one is meetup.com. Meetup, if you're not familiar with it, is a way that you can find local community meetups. You can find events on there as well. It's a very cool website, and it's definitely worthwhile that if you haven't taken a little bit of time to experiment with it, it's well worth your time. This is the main way that we see a lot of the Hack the Box meetups organized, and it's the way that I've seen a lot of meetups in my area organized, so definitely keep an eye on this. This is going to be the best resource if you have something that's available. Beyond that, Facebook, you would be surprised a lot of people, you can find Facebook groups that people have made them, that they've been out there forever. You find these groups like Google Plus groups, yeah, the old Google social media site groups. And these groups have been out there and they've just been around for forever, that they've never updated what platform they're on. And you can find a lot of groups like this on Facebook, so definitely something to consider. Twitter, obvious answer. InfoSec Twitter, if you're not involved, if you don't have a Twitter, I highly recommend making one. Just start following a couple folks. Having a Twitter versus not having a Twitter in InfoSec makes a substantial difference. Beyond that, when we're looking at Twitter, you can look for people that are in your general regional area. One of my favorite examples for this are the Hackers Association's meetup groups. And a lot of these are DEF CON meetup groups, which if you're not necessarily familiar with DEF CON meetup groups, those are groups that are branded by DEF CON as sort of worthy of having the, the DEF CON moniker as part of the group title. And you can find a lot of those on Twitter. Rather, one of the examples that I wanted to point out here was Nova Hackers over here in the US. They are a geographic, they're a group of hackers that are mostly confined, or rather dedicated to the area of Washington, D.C. So right around that Northern Virginia area. And that's where you get Nova Hackers. And you can find people with these Twitter handles that maybe it's, I don't know, something like Hackers Association Dubai, or maybe whatever city you're looking for. Look for that. See if it exists. You can find local clubs this way as well that are at maybe colleges or maybe smaller meetup groups. And these don't necessarily have to be hacking meetup groups, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Bottom left one, this is my favorite topic that's kind of hidden in for finding these meetup groups. It's the library. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but a lot of times you can find your meetup groups that form at your local library. Now you can't get as excited or have necessarily the same levels of energetic fun at a library versus going to like a bar with a meetup, or going to an area like a restaurant, or having food delivered, I don't know, or another meetup space. You see the difference with the library, but the library oftentimes will have a lot of meetup groups that are available. So definitely something to be aware of. And if you haven't checked it, definitely consider it. And again, you can look at things that are different than hacking with this. Reddit, this can be a little bit of a long shot, depending on how active your area is. But it can be a great way that you can start finding other individuals, people that are learning maybe in the different subreddits dedicated to information security. You can find these different people that you can meet up with and start forming your hacking clan in this way. And then lastly there, Eventbrite. This is mostly for conferences and whatnot. This is heavily used in the United States. I'm not sure how this is used around the world, but it's a very convenient service, and I have seen meetup groups using Eventbrite before. So if you haven't checked it out before, definitely check out what's going on in your local area. Communities to consider. So I mentioned in the previous slide that it's not always about hacking. A lot of times you're going to find more success looking for groups that are not about hacking in your local area, and you will find people that are interested in information security or, you know, offense, defense in those actual groups. So you can often find smaller subsets of these groups that are dedicated to InfoSec. One of the biggest ones is AWS Cloud Resources. I have seen a lot of cloud meetups that have been kind of growing and becoming more prominent in the last couple of years. Obviously, this is something that can waver a little bit between both physical and digital for the meetup location. But again, very cool technology. And because it's closer to that cutting edge and a lot of what we are working on as hackers, you can find that a lot of InfoSec professionals usually are at these events. The next one there, the generic coding block that I found that image for, just represents coding groups in general. You will find a lot of like web development groups, things like that around your local area that you can consider going to. And a lot of times, again, it's that tangential interest in hacking, and it's even just being involved in knowing your local community. Beyond this, a lot of times when you are attending a meetup group, you can meet people that know about other meetup groups, because as it turns out, people that go to these things often go to more than one of them. And you can find out about meetups that you don't know about. For example, you could find InfoSec meetups or dedicated like offense meetups that might just be a little bit smaller and might not be on maybe Eventbrite or Meetup or one of those major platforms. And again, this really goes to emphasize that hacking isn't necessarily always the answer here. Down to the bottom left, that's kind of just a general icon to represent defense, and then Splunk on that shield. You can find defensive communities. Definitely consider that even if you are looking towards, you want to be in offense, you want to be a penetration tester, you want to be a red teamer, and do adversary emulation, even going to defensive groups can really help, because in order to do offense well, you really do need to know defense. And again, you have that tangential interest in this group. It's really all about getting involved and being out there. The hardest step is just putting yourself out there, getting involved even just a little bit. And beyond that, it all becomes a lot easier. And then down in the bottom right, you can consider even more exotic things like game programming. These are very common groups to see, where you see local game development meetups or different maker spaces even. Again, really consider that variety, because you don't know what's out there until you start looking. Starting your own meetup. So this is a little bit more of the hardcore option. If you don't necessarily find that you have a meetup in your area, you can look at creating your own. And that can be challenging in some ways, but we'll talk about those in just a moment. But more than anything, it can be rewarding. Starting your own, the first one here is for the physical meetups. The biggest one here is jobs, and more jobs. We'll get to that in a moment. That's actually copied from another slide. I wanted to hint towards it here. As we're looking at meetups, you can look at drawing from pre-existing resources. For example, you have Hack the Box meetups that we would love to support you. Let us know that you're starting a meetup. That's cool. We'd love to know about it. And if you register to become a Hack the Box meetup, we can look at getting you swag. We can look at getting you vouchers. We can look at getting you support in that way. So definitely consider that. Getting into actually some of the nitty gritty, looking at creating a meetup. Let's talk about what the real how looks like, just very briefly. Meetups could be their entire own presentation, and they've already taken up a lot of this. And starting one really has a different set of challenges with it. Looking at the real how, you can expect a little bit of challenge if you want to start a meetup. One of the most difficult parts of getting a meetup, actually two things here, are getting people in the door and then actually finding activities for your meetings. We'll talk about activities on the next slide when I talk about digital, just because you can have physical and digital activities that are the same. But getting people in the door can be a lot about your enthusiasm. So just be prepared that if you are interested in starting a meetup, well, it can be challenging. If you are willing to bring that enthusiasm and willing to bring that passion to it, you'll find that it's, one, very enriching and rewarding, but two, easier than you probably would have thought, just if you prepared for it. Knowing the work expectations with a meetup, you will have to prepare activities. You're going to want to look at creating a team to have a sort of board for your meetup. And it's very important to know that you should expect to attend this pretty much every month, at least as you're getting started. Well, with having a team, you can sort of get around that. You can have a few months that maybe you're not necessarily there. You being there, you can't just kind of hand it off to other people. That's not how meetups work. You being there, you're kind of the heart of the meetup, and it's really, really important to go through, pardon me, notification. It's very important to bring that enthusiasm to the table continuously, because your enthusiasm will be repeated in your members. You're going to see other people be excited because you are. You're going to see a lot of people that want to join because you are bringing good content. You're bringing this level of quality to the meetup. And again, knowing that work expectation going in can be really powerful. And again, I don't say this to freak you out. I don't say this to make you not want to start a meetup. Rather, I want you to understand, as someone that's watching this presentation, what can go into this and why that is rewarding. What starting really can be like. Again, I mentioned the actual membership count, getting people in the door. The importance of sustainability here is the big point I want to hit on. Sustainable means doing work that you can build on. That is really key with meetups, especially if you're busy in your own life. When we're looking at sustainability, look at documentation, look at keeping things simple. Doing very complicated activities can be a lot of fun, but it's often better just to start simple and really focus on having doing the basics well. If you can do the basics well with your meetup, you're going to go very far. Moving on to digital, very briefly, digital meetups mostly take place on Discord. Again, you have the jobs aspect here. When we're looking at jobs, I'll talk about this in a moment. I really wanted to allude to that and forgot it on this slide as well. But again, when we're looking at where these meetups take place, we're looking at Discord mostly. You can have meetup communities that take place in other forms, but you know, that's not as common. Twitter Spaces, things like that, not really as much of a thing. I've seen some meetups start to develop that way, but expect to be involved with the Discord this way, or Slack even. Discord's easier because you have voice channels though, so definitely consider that. You're going to want to keep things active. This is even more important with digital. Having just some basic level of chatter that's going on, and this is something that even goes to Discords in general, that can be really important. Just be willing to just talk with people that are your members. Be willing to talk to them about projects you're doing. Pardon me. And you can see how these can be spun off into activities. So definitely something to really consider, and something even more so to be aware of when you are starting one of these meetups, just because, again, it comes into that workload expectation. And then the actual meetings, getting to the nitty gritty of what is going to happen. I mentioned activities already, but knowing how to bring in bring in talks, how to reach out to presenters, and maybe bring in people that might not be in your local area, but are willing to talk and willing to take advantage of something really important that I want to talk about later with how you grow from meetups, but having a safe space to present, a safe space to mess up. That's really important here with talks. And if you can capture that with your digital meetup, you're going to see a lot of people want to come and present, which is an excellent situation to be in. Versus physical, very quickly touching on this. When you're looking at physical meetups versus digital meetups, a lot of the difference comes into the connection, again, keeping things active, making sure that people feel like they're a part of it, and again, having that consistency so that those meetings are happening every month. If you have a couple meetings that start lapsing, maybe you take a month off and then you take another month off, you really need to make sure you get back on the ball or have someone else that's willing to step up in your stead, because those 2 months off can be killer. You really want to make sure that you keep that going, and it doesn't have to be a crazy activity every time. It could be just a social, but it needs to happen. Versus physical, very importantly, you have a difference in the activities that you can do. You're not going to be able to do lockpicking as much and things like that. But with having a digital setting, you have much more access to labs. Like, for example, if your meetup wanted to look at doing Hack the Box activities during the meetup, that's very common for Hack the Box meetups to go in, start attacking a box together. Go through and work with other penetration testers, which, one, excellent experience. If you've never had the opportunity to do paired pen testing, it's a ton of fun and you're going to learn a lot from it. But it's one thing that you really want to make sure that you consider as you are going into these meetups, because it is a very enriching part of the meetup experience. And again, it goes into that difference versus physical. Growing from meetups, I alluded to this in the last slide. Let's talk about some of the obvious and furthermore, some of the non-obvious ways that you can grow from meetups. And you may already be attending one of these, and hopefully this is still helpful as something that you might be able to focus on going into the future. Growing from meetups, the biggest one here, and the one that I really want to hit on, and this even comes into Discord staff and just being involved with the community in general, is leadership. If you want to break into InfoSec, especially as someone that might be in the community and might not be part, or might be trying to get your foot in the door, which can be difficult at times, the leadership aspect is key. You can have great soft skills and not as great technical skills and still make it into cybersecurity. And that's one of the things that catches a lot of people off guard. Leadership is a really key part of that. There's two different ways you can show leadership here. And it's from both being a member and also being part of the meetup staff. I talked before about starting a meetup, starting a physical meetup, starting a digital meetup. You grow differently from actually running an event. You can put on individual events, you can work on conferences, and you will grow in a different way from that as well. But it's all about showing that leadership. It's all about being able to demonstrate it when employers are in the room. And I'll mention that a little bit later with the actual demonstration part of growing from meetups, but you are going to have people that are actively involved in the community. And a lot of these people either are in hiring positions or have the ability to give input on your hiring positions, or maybe forward positions to you that you can apply to. It's really important that you know that this leadership opportunity is out there, because if you don't and you're not taking advantage of it, you're probably losing out on growth and losing out on maybe job prospects or ways that you can learn just because you're not focusing on it. Speaking from a leadership perspective, speaking very briefly, and speaking with purpose, showing good presentation skills in general, those, if you can bring them and demonstrate them on a consistent basis, even just the first time, that can be really powerful for showing that you have a voice, showing your knowledge, showing your talent, and really showing how you can present things to a potentially less technical audience depending on your meetup. And then you have your teamwork aspect of this. This is, I can't understate how important teamwork is with looking at the leadership from meetups. When we're looking at teamwork, it's how do you interact with not just staff of the meetup, thanking them, making sure that you appreciate what's going on and appreciating the work that's going on behind the scenes if you're not running it, but also how you interact with other members. Because if you're being rude and being awful to other members, or trying to go in and having an ego at these events, good luck. People in InfoSec don't really like egos, and you're losing out on a lot of opportunities here to show off that teamwork and show off these soft skills that, if you're not taking advantage of that, you're missing out. Speaking, you can show your business candor, your language, your raw talent. This really goes into how you can actually present ideas, how you can talk to potentially a less technical audience that might not be offense or offensively focused. I mentioned this specifically with looking at penetration test roles or offensive roles in particular. Being able to show that off and being able to show that you can take these complex technical topics and break them down to something that's much more digestible, that's really powerful, and it's something that I can't overstate how important that is. And then your speaking ability, again, desirability of soft skills, can't overstate those. Being able to show your speaking ability is going to be awesome, and this gives you a place where you can really build up that speaking ability in the first place. Demonstrations, you're really looking at passion here. And then the second point, pardon me, goes hand in hand with this, the interview before the interview on your terms. As we're looking at passion, looking at demonstrations, this is something that slips under a lot of people's radar. When you are giving a presentation at a meetup or giving a presentation to industry professionals, you are kind of doing an interview, but it's on your terms, because you get to choose what you're going to talk about, and you might get to talk about things that you wouldn't even normally talk about in in an interview setting in the first place. Maybe you want to demonstrate how you went and abused a bunch of, I don't know, maybe modded Minecraft code or things like that. You can show off a lot of these fun things, and that can be really hard to bring up in interviews. You can really see how this is something that you can take and grow on, and really can use to your benefit. For the employers in the room, or rather the people that might be watching this presentation, not to be confused with my last point there, if you are potentially in a hiring position, or maybe you are going to these meetups and you can give input to hiring positions. When you are at these meetups, if you're looking for younger hackers, a lot of times they're going to be looking for advice. They're going to be looking for just some affirmation of their either their skills or different ways that they can learn. And furthermore, they might be looking for these opportunities. You can go ahead, you can really look at how they're demonstrating their talent, how what they're bringing to the actual meetup itself, like the kind of topics, how technical it is, things like that. And you can really be an advocate for them in this way. And then employers in the room, a lot of people, as I mentioned, that are at these meetups are in a hiring position or otherwise. So again, take advantage of that safe space to mess up that you have, and recognize that you really can grow a lot from these. And then, as I've alluded to many times throughout this, wait, there are jobs. Meetups very commonly have a job announcement section. And it's very, again, you can see a lot of this is very focused on getting people into industry and helping industry professionals stay up to date. That's really a lot of what you're going to get from meetups. And beyond that, it's a cool group of people usually to hang out with. Depends on your meetup a little bit, but generally speaking, you're going to find a lot of cool people in this way. Networking, you're going to meet other people in industry and just make friends with them, where you might otherwise struggle with this if you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. And, again, don't know, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, what the local hiring pool looks like, where professionals work, where there might even be these positions at. This networking and just meeting people in a space where people are more likely to be at, InfoSec professionals are more likely to be at, is very powerful. And you're going to find that you're going to be a lot more connected this way versus otherwise. Even just attending one, you're going to notice it. Demonstrational, again, I mentioned this with the presentations before, and the slide right before this. You can demonstrate your skills, you can demonstrate your candor, your soft skills. You're really, again, getting that interview on your terms and being able to speak about something that you really care about. And if you've never done that before, I can't recommend it enough. How to give back to meetups, just very quickly at the end here. When we're looking at giving back to meetups, it's being a good member. Again, I love the jobs note here because some of this can be bringing job positions to the actual meetups. When you have news segments, when you have job segments, when you have maybe discussions or whatnot, contributing to those, being a good member as part of those, that's how you give back. It's not necessarily all donations. It's not necessarily buying a shirt when there's a fundraiser. It's not necessarily, I've mentioned here as the last point, getting your business to sign up to sponsor the meetup. It's actively contributing. It's being there. It's bringing presentations and being willing to participate in a positive way that helps others grow. Again, it's very important that you want to look at giving back just because there's so much that meetups do for us. But otherwise, that is all I had for today on Meetups. Thank you so much for tuning in with Cyber Apocalypse. Again, Meetups are very near and dear to my heart. I can't recommend them enough. If you're already attending one, definitely make sure that you're being a good member. But otherwise, stay tuned for more awesome Cyber Apocalypse content. And I'll see you this weekend with the CTF. Thanks for watching.